So what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Black Friday in America? Yeah, I don't blame you. America is a very competitive place at the best of times, and let's just say at one point in the late 2000s and early 2010s, Black Friday turned that competitiveness up to a point that strongly resembled the Purge. While I'm unable to confirm the exact time period of every Black Friday horror show that you see on YouTube, I feel like this calmed down quite a bit recently when everyone in America saw those videos and realized how ridiculous things were getting. With that said, I feel comfortable pinning these madhouse type of catastrophes to around the mid-2000s all the way until the mid-2010s. I personally only had a somewhat crazy experience back in college in 2009 when, on Black Friday, my friends and I ventured out to a nearby Toys R Us. One of my friends wanted to see if he could get a cheap board game for one of his family members for Christmas, but the rest of us were kind of just there to see if things were really as crazy as we'd heard. That was the first time that I ever saw a line for a store go the length of a strip mall. It only got more crazy as we got inside. All of the aisles were packed tight with people. You could barely move and basically were left at the mercy of the flow of traffic to take you where you needed to go. In the end, we didn't even find the board game and went home empty-handed. Kind of a disappointing experience in that regard. But that isn't the story that I'm here to tell you today. As you can see, this video is about a not so typical experience on Black Friday, and the story I just told is a pretty typical Black Friday experience in America. No, for this one, we'll need to fast forward just a little bit. The year was 2013. I had just graduated college that summer and was working a door-to-door job, which was about as much fun as it sounds. It was right around this time that E3 happened and formally kicked off the 8th generation of consoles. Microsoft infamously tripped and face-planted out of the gate with the Xbox One, which gave Sony the opening to position their PlayStation 4 and run away with this console generation. It was at that point that pre-orders opened up for both consoles, and I decided to wait as the specs sounded kind of weak on both systems, and I was also broke. By the time I had some money together later in the summer, pre-orders were long gone, and I just sort of shrugged and decided to stick with my gaming laptop for the time being. Cut to a few months later, and as someone who paid a lot of attention to gaming content on YouTube, I got swept up in the new console fever. While this console launch didn't have a massively exciting offering of games, I still had a pretty strong interest in the PS4 exclusive title, Killzone Shadowfall. I had played Killzones 1 through 3 on PS3 and was impressed by the general look of Killzone Shadowfall. I was also pretty interested in the new DualShock 4, as this was the first time that Sony had significantly altered the design of their controller since the original DualShock. The only problem at this point was that pre-orders for the PS4 had long since sold out, despite checking stock at various stores regularly. At one point, I even resorted to buying a crapload of those big box meals from Taco Bell that had a PS4 as a prize for like a month. To this day, I don't think my stomach has quite forgiven me for that one, especially since I didn't end up winning. Towards the end of November, I sort of gave up and just stopped checking stock and told myself I'd just wait until the console wasn't constantly selling out. It seemed like it would be quite a while at the time though. Excitement for the PS4 was pretty high, and I had remembered other highly anticipated consoles like the Wii selling out for months after launch. I had figured that the PS4 would have a similar issue given the borderline fever pitch around it at the time. Because of this, my lack of patience in general, combined with all the excitement, led to a lot of aggressive foot tapping and pacing. So the week of Thanksgiving came, and Gamestop put out a press release saying that they had some additional PS4 and Xbox One units held for Black Friday and would be sold first come first serve starting at midnight that Friday. For those that might be confused, this was back before Black Friday started eating Thanksgiving. Side note, I actually walked into a GameStop today and saw that they're opening up at 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving this year. While I do find this infuriating, I don't find this surprising, unfortunately, but I digress. Despite how much I wanted to get a PS4, I definitely hesitated when I first heard about this. Did I really want to jump into the consumer mosh pit that was Black Friday at that time? Did I really want to get potentially trampled by some overzealous parents over a game console? Was it really worth it? I went back and forth with this for the next few days, and finally, Thanksgiving came. I had a normal Thanksgiving with my family, and towards the evening, drove my sister and her boyfriend to a nearby train station. It was on the way home that I just went, screw it, I'm doing this. I figured I was a big guy, so I'd be okay even if it did get a little crazy. Plus, a friend of mine who was equally as big decided to come hang out with me while I waited in line just for fun. As an extra precaution though, I did pick a GameStop that was tucked away at a local strip mall, which was far enough away from any highway to significantly reduce the likelihood that it would get totally overrun with people. So with my best plan possible set up, my friend and I set off on our Black Friday adventure. We arrived at the GameStop a few hours before midnight, as we were sure there would already be a line. We were right, but not in the sense that there were a lot of people in line at all. There were, in fact, only 2 people in line ahead of us. The first one in line was a guy around my age who, funny enough, worked at the Taco Bell nearby. If I remember correctly, he had a shift pretty early on Friday, so he was effectively doing a burn shift at a fast food job to get this thing, which was pretty rough. The second guy was a high school kid who had been dropped off by his dad to hold their place in line. The kid explained to me that while he was waiting in line for the PS4, his dad was buying it for him as a Christmas present and wasn't going to let him play it until Christmas. Keep in mind, New Jersey winters are nothing to scoff at, so the fact that this kid was waiting for hours in the freezing cold for something that he had to wait another month to play was pretty intense. His dad was also nowhere to be found, so I had assumed he was somewhere else, somewhere warm probably. So the four of us sat outside this GameStop talking about various gaming stuff, like whether or not we thought the new Call of Duty was going to be any good, how many PS4s or Xbox One this GameStop even had given the scarcity, and also the occasional moaning and groaning about the cold. People did eventually start showing up to line up behind my friend and I. The line got a bit longer, but nothing like what you would normally see on those Black Friday videos. This didn't really look any longer than a typical midnight release for a game or anything like that. No one was being rude, people weren't trying to cut in line. It was just a really relaxed atmosphere where a bunch of gamers were talking about how excited they were for a new console. There were people my age there were high school kids, and there were even a handful of very dedicated parents who knew that this was the best chance to get a console for their kids. Then, to add on top of this overall relaxed vibe that was going on here, the high school kid's dad showed up a bit later with 2 boxes of Dunkin' Donuts hot chocolate and a bunch of cups for the people in line. I don't know what it is, but acts of kindness from random strangers, especially on Black Friday, just give me a little more hope for humanity. Finally, the GameStop employees arrived and started handing out tickets so you could buy a PS4 or an Xbox One. To my surprise, they had a lot more consoles than I thought they would. I was expecting a small store like this to have maybe 5 PS4s at most, but if I remember correctly, they had enough for everyone in line between the 2 consoles. So the doors opened at midnight, and after hours of sitting in the cold, I had my PS4 and a copy of Killzone Shadowfall. Unfortunately, I only got to play it for a little bit when I got home, as I had to work the next morning and needed the sleep. Needless to say, that day felt like a particularly long shift. Oddly enough, I actually ended up grabbing food at the first in line guy's Taco Bell that weekend, and he seemed like he was just counting the minutes until the end of his shift as well. Other than that, though, I never saw him or the high school kid ever again. I'll never forget that experience, though. It was such a massive reversal of expectations for what we know Black Friday shopping to be. I mean, my own experience at that Toys R Us a few years back had taught me that Black Friday just wasn't like this. I have never done anything like that on Black Friday since. Heck, I've ended up working a few Black Fridays in retail, and trust me, you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. I won't get into it as it isn't gaming related, but just take my word for it. Regardless, I don't think I'll ever do something like that again. With the new consoles on the horizon next year, I think I'll just do the smart thing and pre-order right away this time. Anyway, thank you for listening to this fun little story of mine. Do you have any Black Friday horror stories, or maybe you experienced something like what I did here? Please leave a comment below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more from me. Thanks again, everyone. Later.